In this video, I'm going to try to do a kind of review of the previous two videos, which have been on one subject. And that subject is teaching students what the clarinet tone should be like. In other words, teaching students to understand, to grasp the concept of clarinet tone. The reason I'm doing this review is because of the incredible importance of this subject, and it's a subject that is almost ubiquitously neglected. I'm not talking about just junior high and high school. I'm talking about all the way up and down the line. Teachers depend so much on the intuition and the talent of their students, and so little on real objective teaching and systematic presentation that often the students' progress is really slowed down and retarded because because of a lack of understanding a certain fact or a lack of having something clarified, and you don't want that to happen to your students. I have to point the finger at myself as much as anyone else, because in the years I was teaching, my teaching was not always the most well ordered and the most clear. So I understand the situation, but that's the whole point of learning and getting better, is that we improve the faults and weaknesses in our own work, and others benefit from it. You know, I can go into a museum and I can spend all day and usually get a headache in a museum looking at this piece of art and that piece of art. And you know, I'll stand in front of a piece of art for a long time and I'll think, yeah, what? Man, I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't get it. But you know, if there's someone who really knows art and who really understands art that's with me, and they point out various things about the colors and the shadings and the order and the form and the expressive aspects of the work of art, they can help me open my eyes so I can see. You know, I look, but I don't see. Well, they look and see. And they can really help me to begin to see what they see, so that I can improve my own understanding of art and my own grasp of what I'm actually seeing by learning from those people who have the knack. They have the talent already to see that stuff, and I don't. Well, as a clarinet teacher, you have the knack. You have the talent to see stuff that your students, to hear stuff that your students don't necessarily hear. Yes, they listen to the sound, but they don't hear it. They don't hear it accurately. And often we hear the sound and hear it very well, but because we do it intuitively, we don't really know how to explain it or describe it. But our burden as a teacher is to learn how to do that, to explain it and describe it, so that the students' ears become open up. You begin to open up their understanding of what sound is, begin to open up their ears so that you draw their ears' attention to particular things. As far as my own work with teaching clarinet sound went, I began to fix on the aspect of sound, the shape of sound, as being the most effective way to teach students what characteristic clarinet sound was. You know, you may come up with a different and even more effective approach than I have, but I'd ask you, if you've never done this, to begin with that and see how it works for you. And let me encourage you in closing to be persistent. Don't just neglect this as something, or just shove it in as something like an aside. Okay, well, we're going to do a little of this, and then, you know, 3 months later you approach it again. Be persistent every week. Concentrate on imparting that idea of the concept of sound and what you have to do physically in order to make that sound right. So that you're reinforcing every week and helping that student develop the concept and clarify it in their minds and in their ears, just as they're developing their finger technique and their ability to count rhythms and so on and so forth. You have to be persistent with it, but it's going to give you tremendous rewards, because your students are going to begin to get better and better and sound more and more characteristic and be more and more critical of themselves and their stand partners, so that eventually the students will play better in tune and will play with much more consistent breath support throughout the whole instrument, simply because they become, you say, more like kind of gourmets as far as clarinet sound concept goes. And they demand more of themselves, and you don't have to stand over them and say this, that, and the other about the sound, because they're already doing it themselves. They're already listening themselves. So concentrate on that. It'll have rich benefits and rich rewards. And I hit on it one more time, because it's so desperately neglected in the clarinet community, and yet it's so critical and so important. And with that, I'll see you next week, and have a good weekend. Try to remain unincarcerated.